The restaurant was one of those places where the wine list required a linguistics degree and the lighting was dim enough to make everyone look successful. I wore my only decent suit, a navy blue relic from my brother's wedding that I'd sworn never to wear again. The tie felt like a noose, the collar stiff as cardboard, but I showed up anyway because my daughter Olivia was graduating, and that mattered to me regardless of what anyone thought. Sarah sat across from me, radiant in a red dress that screamed, "I've made it," without breaking a sweat. Her fiancé, Ryan, lounged beside her, one of those tech industry types with carefully styled hair and a laugh that always lasted a beat too long. Karen, my ex-wife, perched at the far end of the table, nursing her wine like it was liquid courage for a performance she'd been rehearsing for years. She never once looked my way, which was fine by me. I was accustomed to being invisible. Two of Olivia's friends flanked the table, overdressed and excessively polite. Someone kept remarking how wonderful it was that we were all gathered together, as if this wasn't just a contrived scene for social media posts. The server brought champagne, pouring it carefully glass by glass while someone clinked their utensils against crystal, the universal signal for an impending speech. Olivia stood, holding her glass with practiced elegance. Her voice was soft but deliberate, and I heard Karen's inflections in every syllable. "I just want to say," Olivia began, "how grateful I am to everyone who supported me through these last 4 years. It's been challenging, and I honestly couldn't have done it without Mom's love, the encouragement of Ryan," she squeezed his arm gently, "and the friends who stood by me when things got tough." She paused. People smiled, nodded, and murmured appreciatively. My hands remained folded in my lap. I was waiting, sensing something turning in my chest like a rusted lock that hadn't been touched in decades. "And now that we're all here," she stared directly at me, her eyes colder than the untouched seafood appetizer on my plate, "I want to acknowledge someone else. My father." Karen's head turned, as did the others. A few uncomfortable titters broke the tension. Olivia smiled, but there was no warmth in it. It was glacial. "Dad, you showed up tonight, so that's something." I didn't move. I didn't blink. "But let's be honest," she continued, her voice growing sharper, clearer. "You didn't raise me. You didn't help me. You weren't there for my birthdays, didn't pick me up from practice, and weren't there when it mattered. You don't get to claim credit just because you paid for a meal. You don't deserve to be here." The table froze. Even the ambient music and clinking glasses from nearby tables seemed to fade beneath the weight of those words. Karen didn't intervene, didn't interrupt, her silence the most obvious betrayal of all. I looked at Olivia and saw the infant I once rocked to sleep, the toddler who used to race toward me on playgrounds, the little girl who once called me her hero. That child was gone, replaced by a polished woman with my ex-wife's voice and a stranger's eyes. I clapped once, twice, 3 times, slow, deliberate applause like you'd give a magician whose trick you'd figured out halfway through. The table didn't know how to react. Olivia's smile faltered. Karen's mouth moved but produced no sound. No one said anything. I picked up my napkin, wiped my lips, and said, "Well, I guess I'll get the check." I left before dessert arrived. The walk to the parking lot was peaceful. I didn't slam the car door, didn't punch the steering wheel, didn't shed tears. I just drove, 30 minutes of highway and empty silence until I reached my driveway, still wearing that ridiculous outfit. Inside, I sat at my computer and logged into the college fund account that Karen never acknowledged and Olivia never asked about. It was in my name, filled with years of savings, tuition, rent, books, living expenses. Every penny she assumed came from scholarships and Mom's hard work. Every debt she thought she didn't owe. I was the invisible source. I stared at the balance, then quietly transferred every dollar to a separate account, mine. I didn't hesitate. Then I composed a brief message, printed it, folded it in half, and placed it in an envelope addressed to Olivia. No lengthy explanation, no dramatic manifesto, just 2 words. Earn it. The next morning, I woke to 73 missed calls, Olivia, Karen, unknown numbers. No voicemails, just the frantic pinging of a phone trying to screen. I didn't respond. I prepared coffee, ate breakfast slowly, and watched a squirrel on the fence struggle with an acorn too large to carry. It was strangely peaceful. She hadn't texted yet. Perhaps she expected me to cave. Maybe she thought I should feel guilty. I didn't feel guilty. I felt seen. And for the first time in 22 years, I felt like I was finally doing something right. People often talk about presence as if it's a simple concept, as if just showing up proves you care. But no one tells you what it's like to be present in the shadows, to love from the margins, and to spend years trying to matter to someone who's constantly told that you don't. I used to believe that if I remained steady, quiet, helpful, and dependable, eventually she'd figure it out. But now I understand that silence doesn't build bridges. It merely allows the other side to burn them without resistance. Olivia was 4 when Karen and I divorced. I remember how she clung to my pant leg that day as I packed my belongings and walked out of the house we'd spent nearly a decade trying to make into a home. Karen stood in the doorway, arms crossed and expressionless, as if she couldn't wait for me to leave so she could begin rewriting history. "You can still be around," she'd said, and she meant it the way a landlord says you can stay until the lease expires before secretly doubling the rent. It started with small changes, rescheduled visits, unanswered phone calls, overbooked holidays. I tried to be understanding, swallowed my pride like medicine, thinking it best not to rock the boat. I told myself that just showing up was enough, even if I had to wait in the car while she got ready, even if I received the discount version of parenting where everything had been decided before I entered the room. I worked 2 jobs throughout most of Olivia's childhood, warehouse shifts during the week and bartending on weekends. I missed much, not because I didn't want to be there, but because someone had to pay for both our roofs. I paid child support on time, never missed a payment, never argued about the figure Karen gave me, even when money was tight. I remember one month having $42 left after bills. $42. I bought bread, eggs, and apples, telling myself it was sufficient. When Olivia turned 10, Karen enrolled her in a private school. Naturally, I wasn't consulted. I was simply handed a tuition bill and an ultimatum: if you care about her future, you'll find a way. So I did. I canceled my health insurance, took extra shifts, and said no to everything that wasn't her. Every month, I wired money directly to the school. No questions asked, no thanks expected. And when Olivia mentioned how much her mother sacrificed to get her into that school, I just nodded. What was I supposed to do? Pull her aside and say, "Actually, sweetie, your mom was just the spokesperson. I was the bank account?" She attended Westbrook University. I paid for every semester, all 10 of them. The irony is that she always claimed she received full scholarships, that she earned them through merit, and that Karen handled the rest. But no one gets through 10 semesters without help, and that help was me. Every term, I received an invoice in my mailbox and paid it within 72 hours. I saved the confirmation emails. I'm not sure why. Perhaps I thought I'd show them to her someday. Maybe I imagined she'd want to know. I wasn't even invited to her high school graduation. Karen explained they only had 2 tickets. She took her sister. I learned about the ceremony from Olivia's Facebook post, featuring a photo of her in the green gown with honor cords. I drove there anyway, parked behind the school, and stood in the back row, just close enough to see her face. She never knew I was there. I sent her a present anonymously, a silver necklace engraved with her initials. She thanked her mother for it in a Facebook comment thread. I never corrected her. You want to talk about gifts? Let's discuss the time Olivia broke her ankle in 8th grade, and Karen didn't tell me until 3 days later. Or when Olivia needed a new laptop for school, and I maxed out my credit card to get her the one she wanted, only to see her post online about how her mother came through again. Or the time she was hospitalized for exhaustion during sophomore year, which I learned about from a coworker's friend because Karen didn't want to burden me. I was there, always there, just not where others could see me. So when she stood in that fancy restaurant, surrounded by friends and glasses of wine that cost more than my weekly groceries, and told me I didn't help her, that I didn't raise her, and that I didn't deserve to be there, I wasn't angry. I didn't yell, cry, or slam my fist down like a soap opera father trying to win a scene. I just heard the echo of all those years, all those missed birthdays, all those quiet sacrifices she never knew about because someone made sure she never saw them, and I smiled, not from joy but from something colder, harder, because I recognized the truth. She wasn't wrong, not in her eyes, and not in the reality Karen had presented her. I'd allowed myself to become invisible, and now I was being punished for succeeding. "You did nothing for me," she said. I replayed that statement over and over the next morning, sitting quietly with my coffee, letting those words hang in the air like smoke from a fire I didn't start. I didn't return her calls. I didn't need to, because for once, I had the silence to myself. There's something terribly powerful about how a lie, repeated deliberately and with conviction over the years, can seep into a child's bones and become their moral compass, a shield against the very person who would have taken a bullet for them without hesitation. Karen didn't launch an obvious smear campaign after our divorce. No, she was too clever for that. She poisoned the well drop by drop, always with a smile and just enough plausible deniability to make you doubt your own memory. "Daddy works too much," She'd say when I missed a recital I hadn't been invited to. Or, if Daddy loved you enough, he'd take you to Disney World like Jessica's dad, when I couldn't afford it. Olivia, as a child, drank the poison like it was water. Karen had the gift, if you can call it that, of rewriting history before it happened. If Olivia earned a C on a test, it was because I wasn't there to help her study. If she cried at a birthday party, it was because I hadn't called that morning. If she didn't make varsity in 10th grade, it was because I hadn't pushed her enough growing up. Everything negative became my responsibility, and everything positive became a testament to Karen's courage as a single mother, despite the fact that she wasn't truly single but deliberately isolated. And Olivia took every twisted interpretation of events, tucked them into her heart like small truths, and used them to build the wall that would eventually shut me out completely. I remember Olivia asking for a horse when she was 7, a damn horse, during one of my visitation weekends. We were sitting in the mall food court eating pretzels when she looked up at me and said, "Why won't you buy me a horse like Mom said you promised?" I was speechless. I laughed at first, thinking she was joking, but her expression, that dead serious, already hurt look, made my stomach drop. "Honey," I said, "horses need land, stables, and feed, but we live in a one-bedroom apartment." She stared down at her cinnamon sugar pretzel and whispered, "You just don't want me to be happy." And that, I believe, was the moment I understood I was losing her, not because of anything I did, but because someone else was painting a picture of me that I couldn't match, a mythical deadbeat, unreliable and selfish. A man who couldn't show up and didn't care when he didn't. I became the scapegoat for every bump in the road, every minor childhood disappointment, since it was easier than recognizing that the world doesn't always give you what you want. Especially when the adults around you are more focused on settling scores than parenting children. Karen had the advantage of being present for every tear, tantrum, and spelling bee, and she used that position like a sculptor's hammer and chisel, carving Olivia's image of me until nothing remained but the shell of a man who existed only to disappoint. And God help me, I let her. Because every time I considered fighting back, taking Karen to court or requesting equal custody, I imagined Olivia caught in the middle, crying in a fluorescent-lit mediation room as 2 lawyers fought over her future. So I stayed quiet. I kept writing checks. I kept showing up in the small ways I was allowed. I kept believing that if I was consistent enough, if I was quiet and good and giving, Olivia would see through the fog on her own. But she didn't. Over time, I became a ghost with a checkbook. I was the dad who always paid but never came to the party, who sent Christmas gifts with no return address, and whose birthday calls went straight to voicemail. I was valuable yet invisible. That's the thing about being invisible. People stop thinking of you as a person. They stop thinking you have feelings, pride, or a breaking point. I was telling my friend Jack about all this one night, sitting in his garage with a couple of cheap beers, the air heavy with the smell of old motor oil and whatever regrets live in a man's tool shed. He let me talk for a long time, not interrupting, just nodding and grunting at the appropriate moments. Then he leaned back in his broken lawn chair, took a long swig of his beer, and said, "You kept feeding a wolf, hoping it wouldn't bite. Guess what, buddy? It bit." Jack had a knack for delivering the harsh truth in a single sentence with no garnish. Later that night, I listened to Olivia's message. She sounded different from the person who humiliated me at dinner. Her voice was broken open, raw, almost childlike in its desperation. "Please, Dad, we need to talk. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Just please call me." And for a brief moment, I almost did. But the echo of her words at the table, "You don't deserve to be here," rang louder than anything else, because despite what she claims now, that moment wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a slip of the tongue. It was how she truly saw me, the monster her mother created. Perhaps she preferred it that way. The first voicemail arrived just before dawn, her voice shaking, partly sleepy, or perhaps just broken down in that raw, early morning way when the world seems colder than it is. I didn't respond. I just sat at the kitchen table, my coffee lukewarm, listening to the message play over the phone speaker as if it were someone else's child speaking. "Dad, I don't know what's happening. My card isn't working, and I have rent due Friday. Can you please call me?" The panic in her voice wasn't like the contempt she directed at me over that dinner. That was a slap disguised as a toast, meant for a large audience. This was genuine, unrefined fear that can't be faked. The second voicemail came 30 minutes later. She was crying now, without pretense. "Dad, please. I think something's wrong with the account. I tried calling Mom, but she has no idea what I'm talking about. Please can you call me?" She paused, perhaps expecting me to pick up mid-message like she used to do, assuming that if she wished hard enough, things would resolve themselves. But nothing came. Just silence. She hung up. By the fifth voicemail, she had stopped crying. Her voice had shifted between begging and blaming, something Karen often did when things didn't go her way. "I don't know why you're doing this," Olivia snapped into the receiver, "but it's not okay. I have responsibilities now. I have bills and an internship, and this is cruel. Dad, this is beneath you." As if she suddenly knew what was above or beneath me. As if she ever cared before about what I carried on my back to give her the illusion of freedom. I sat through every message she left, each one growing a bit more desperate, then angry, then quiet again, a full cycle unfolding in real time. By lunchtime, there were 73 missed calls, along with short texts like, "Call me? What happened? Are you okay?" Then they got longer. "This isn't like you. I didn't mean what I said. Please don't do this to me." But I wasn't doing anything to her. I'd simply stopped doing everything for her. There's a difference. One is an act of cruelty. The other is a long overdue act of survival. Karen finally called at 2 p.m., when I assume Olivia had told her the whole story and realized Mom had no control over the consequences. Her voice was firm and furious, with that familiar tone she used when she believed she was right. "James, what the hell are you playing at?" she demanded, not even saying hello. "Olivia is in crisis. Her internship is on the line. You know damn well that stipend was tied to her placement. Her rent's unpaid, and her computer needs replacing. What do you expect her to do now?" I didn't say anything for a moment, just listened to the jingling of her bracelets against the phone, the impatience in her breathing, and the entitlement that had built up over years of making decisions she never paid for. And then I said, as plainly as I've ever said anything in my life, "No. This time, I'm just letting her see what that really feels like." She gasped, that dramatic, practiced gasp I'd heard 100 times during our marriage when things didn't go her way. "You're abandoning her," she declared, her voice rising like a siren. "Not abandoning," I replied. "Just stepping out of the way. You raised her to believe I was nothing. Maybe it's time she lives in that world for real." She called me selfish, cold, and vindictive, and said I'd never forgive myself, but none of it landed the way it used to. I used to fold like cheap furniture when she said things like that, certain I was the villain because I didn't want to argue. But not this time. This time, I held the silence long enough to make her uncomfortable. Then I hung up. Jack showed up later that night. He always had perfect timing, like a working-class guardian angel with a cooler full of cheap beer and opinions as hot as his lawn-mower exhaust. We sat in the garage like we did when I first moved in, same plastic chairs, same crappy radio station playing in the background. I told him everything, from the dinner to the bank transfer, and he just listened, nodding as men do when they know there's no advice to offer, only solidarity. "You sure this won't come back to haunt you?" he finally asked, cracking open another beer and sliding it across the table to me. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Jack, I've been haunted for 20 years, and the ghost knows my name." That night, I drove to the bank, not out of fear or regret, but out of clarity. I closed the entire education account, whatever remained. I opened a new account in my name alone. For once, money wasn't for rent or school or for emergencies I didn't know about until they were already past. It was for me. For the first time in over 2 decades, I felt something that didn't quite register as happiness but was close, perhaps peace, or simply not feeling like I owed everyone everything. I spent a long time sitting in the parking lot afterward, engine off, lights down, my phone continuously ringing beside me. I didn't touch it. She had burned the bridge. I had just stopped swimming to the other side. It was nearly midnight when she finally arrived, headlights sweeping across the front of the house like a timid ghost returning to haunt the living. Her car was parked crookedly in the driveway, as if she'd been too nervous to straighten it. I watched from the living room window, lights off, TV silent, sitting in the same chair where I used to read her bedtime stories when her voice was gentle and her love was simple. She didn't knock right away, instead sitting in the car with the engine off, probably rehearsing whatever version of herself she thought might break through the wall between us. I waited, not out of spite or pride, but because I wanted her to truly sit with this moment without the distraction of a phone, a script, or her mother whispering lines behind her back. When she finally knocked, it was soft and hesitant, as if she wasn't sure I'd answer, or perhaps thought I shouldn't. Part of me agreed, but I opened the door anyway. And there she was, no makeup, no styled hair or perfect posture, just raw and real in the way that only someone truly vulnerable can be. Her hair was messily pulled back, as it always was when she studied late or cried too hard to notice her reflection. Her eyes looked as if she hadn't slept since dinner. Despite the disarray, she looked more like my child than she had in years. We stood in the doorway for a long time, just breathing. She didn't try to hug me. I didn't step aside to let her in. Finally, she asked, "Why did you do that?" Her voice was no longer angry. It was something heavier, something that wanted to understand rather than fight. "Why did you shut everything off?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't move from the threshold. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "You told me I didn't do anything. So I stopped doing something." I saw the words land softly but sharply, like broken glass. Her shoulders dropped. It was the first crack. She hadn't expected me to be so honest, especially after years of cutting my tongue bloody. "I didn't know," she murmured, her voice wavering like a radio station between frequencies. "I promise I didn't know, Dad. Mom said you didn't pay, you didn't care, and we were on our own." She looked up, eyes rimmed red, fingers curling into her sleeves like a child again. I believed her. Of course she did. Children always believe the parent who remains present, the one who makes their breakfast and fills their mind with stories, while the other parent becomes a silhouette in a photo frame. "You believed her because I let you," I said softly but firmly, not out of cruelty, but because I had finally found my backbone and wasn't going to surrender it again. "Every time I tried to push for more, she forced you to choose, and with every push, I lost a bit more of you. So I stopped pushing, hoping you'd find your way back on your own." Tears flowed then, and she quickly wiped them away, as if they were shameful, as if I hadn't changed her diapers and comforted her through fevers and nightmares. But I still didn't step forward. I didn't comfort her, because it wasn't time yet. This was the reckoning. "So why didn't you fight harder to be in my life?" she asked, almost shouting, as if the question had been stuck in her throat for years and she'd only now been given permission to scream. "Why didn't you break down the door?" "Because I got tired of bleeding just to prove I loved you," I said, and it came out harsher than I intended, but it was the truth, and she needed to hear it without sugar. "Because I gave up every damn piece of myself, and you handed them all to someone else." She nodded slowly, as if swallowing a truth that would burn on the way down. "I didn't know," she said again, this time quieter, as if the words were shattering in her chest. "I didn't say anything for a long time, just looked at her, at the woman she'd become, at the girl who used to call me her best friend but now treated me like a sad obligation." "Do you want to rebuild something?" I asked finally. "Yes," she whispered. "Good. Then rebuild. But this time, earn it." "Like I did." She looked up, startled, as if she expected forgiveness to be delivered like a coffee order. But there was no free pass waiting, not this time, not after 22 years of erasure. She took a tentative, uncertain step forward, as if approaching a wounded animal. When she reached for my hand, I pulled back, not aggressively or in anger, but just enough to make the message clear. Some bridges don't reconstruct themselves overnight, especially when they've been burning for so long that all that remains is ash and memories. Her eyes welled up again, but she didn't argue. She didn't plead. She stood still at the doorway, and I took a step back. Then I went inside. The door didn't slam. It closed softly. And for the first time in years, I felt something that no apology could ever provide, not peace, but strength. It tasted like both justice and pain,